Hello everyone, my name is Dario Betti and welcome to today's webinar from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. It's a pleasure. My afternoon here for London. It's 8 PT time, 11 ET time. And if you're following us live, or if you're whenever time it is that you're watching on demand later on. Today, we're very happy to have a second bite of the apple, to invite Jack Philbin, the CEO and co-founder of Vibes. And Jack is pretty much a famous person in the industry. Vibes was set up, welcome Jack, about 20 years ago, I think, and international
25 Dario.
25, time flies. And you have grown into something which is an international company. I think it's 26 countries you work, but you definitely have lived and transpired the entire US history of messaging, I should say. And I think it's a great perspective. Maybe today we're going to start with that. Jack, you also have, well, we'll come back to Vibes later, but Vibes has remained an independent company. You have now been part of the M&A. You looked at some of the marketing stack. You took a different perspective of what some people would say the normal path and development has been in the SMS world. And today we'll hear more about that, I guess. What do you call it, the renaissance of messaging? As an Italian, a Florentinian on top. What a perfect title.
Well, it was partially just for you, Dario, of course. Well, thank you. I mean, is that your intro? Can I launch now?
It's all yours. Just in that case, let me remind to people that there is a Q&A button if you have questions, and with that, we will hear Jack at the end of his presentation. If you have anything you would like to add, type it away. But Jack, you're going to give us a presentation now. The floor is yours. I'll be quiet, and then we'll start taking some of those questions, and I might ask you some as well.
Yeah. So thanks, Dario, and yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to give this talk in Miami, and appreciate sort of the second go around here. And I will bring some perspective of history, but then also things that are happening now, and really this onset of AI and the influence that I think is going to be pretty dramatic, and how it shifts and helps our industry, and sort of some of the dangers that are lurking that we need to be careful about as a space. And so I know the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, there's a lot of my comrades and colleagues of the space. And so, you know, it's just a great opportunity to share some of my opinions and some of these frameworks. And so the reason you have this beautiful image from the Sistine Chapel on the front here, a little bit of a tribute to Italy and to Dario. So once again, thank you. But I did have the chance to go to Italy last summer with my family. First big trip of mine to Italy. Gorgeous country, just really loved it. Obviously, you can't see it all in one trip, but I remember going to the Vatican in Rome, and going into the Sistine Chapel, and seeing the beautiful and everything that Michelangelo did. And I looked at this, which I believe is called the Touch of God, and I'm a little bit of a geek, and I thought, oh, that speaks to me as like the longing for human connection. And some people have these religious epiphanies, and I'm thinking about the mobile ecosystem. But I started thinking about the Renaissance and some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today. And I've said over the years that consumers have an insatiable demand for interaction, right? And messaging has been the most impactful in terms of that instant communication, right? You text someone and you almost expect an immediate reply. They get it. You sit and you wait, and sometimes you're thinking, am I going to get a response right away? That's really powerful. And so we need to protect this powerful ecosystem. To the themes that I'm going to get to, not to spoil the conclusion here, but the arrival of two-way conversations, having those dynamic engagements with brands, with enterprises for different use cases that we'll talk about, and just the impacts, the potential impact of AI on messaging and engagement. So I am going to talk about sort of industry dynamics, and my real goal here is just that anybody could take away, some strategic framework, a competitive, something that helps with strategy and competitive analysis. I find the space really fun, really fascinating, and messaging is complicated, and so for those that are new to it, this will certainly be helpful. But it's also complicated for everybody in the space. And so I'm going to break it down into what I think is a simple way to consume, consume mobile. And you're going to hear that theme a lot from me about consumption. How are enterprise brands consuming mobile? And then how do we consume, how the space and everybody interacts and interoperates with one another. So again, I'm just going to do, where are we? How did we get here? What's changing and what's next? So just to start with an example, I spent many years trying to get enterprise marketers, mainly in the US, to put text calls to action into their marketing, into their advertising, whether it be in a print ad or a billboard or stuff we've done in Times Square. And that's, that was hard. We're still, doing that today. And sometimes you need market forces, which I think is what's happening with AI right now. Sometimes you need market forces to sort of create that unlock and create a category. And so, this stat, a little bit old, but 83.4 million US smartphone users will scan a QR code by the end of last year. I think the number was probably higher. I don't have the data. But when you look at just the two things that made QR codes really almost omnipresent. One was they weren't, you had to have a scanning app before they were, before the native camera was able to scan. And so getting the native camera both on Android devices and iOS devices, being able to scan a QR code was certainly part of the unlock. And then that combined with the pandemic, where every restaurant in the country seemingly put a QR code on their menu, you instantly had this ability to do it, and then a reason to do it for consumers throughout the country and certainly throughout the world. And so I think the arrival of AI is one of these market forces that we will get into a bit that's going to create a similar unlock. So before we get to that, I'm not going to go too much into CPaaS, but I think it's really foundational for a lot of the charts and graphs that I have going forward. And so, CPaaS is really the explosion of the communications platform as a service was really an explosion of messaging volume, right? When you think about what's at the center of a CPaaS, it's SMS. And you can see from this chart that a lot of the CPaaS companies, interviewed what channels are you offering? They all want to add more channels. They all want that breadth, right? And so this is data from Nick Lane at Mobile Squared, who I know has been a friend and a supporter and a colleague of MEF, and has presented at MEF a number of times. But SMS is really at the center of the CPaaS explosion. CPaaS creating all sorts of use cases that people could take different APIs and create their own use cases for messaging-centric communications, and obviously adding more. So what's interesting is when you ask consumers how do brands contact you, despite this explosion of use cases and explosion of volume, you're seeing SMS almost up to 40%, but email still dominates the answer, when consumers answer the question, how do brands contact you? And, I think this is really interesting because I'm not a huge fan of email. I actually hate email personally. And from a marketing standpoint, I think, just the open rates, like you can't even compare the percentage of spam in your email inbox to your SMS inbox, right? You can't even compare click-through rates, right? Click-through rates on emails are super low. On SMS, every message is getting opened, and the click-through rates are, insanely high. And so my point is that, email has tonnage, email is a huge space. It's not going anywhere. We'll talk about how, you know, email, it's not going anywhere because it works, right? Unfortunately, even though the open rates are down probably below 10% for a lot of the enterprise brands that we work, like a lot of these emails going to, you know, your Google promotion tab, for instance, or your Gmail promotion tab. And so even though there's a very low open rate, there's still click through and it still works. But when you have SMS with the power, with the open rates, the combo of open rates and click throughs, we definitely need to protect that ecosystem. So I'm going to talk a lot about quality, and I'm going to talk about you know, compliance. But thinking about SMS, like SMS is really, when you, like, in terms of the attention hierarchy, it jumps in front of everything. You could be watching Netflix and on your laptop, you know, shopping on Amazon, but if you get that text, boom, you're looking at your phone. And so it's very powerful, and that power, you know, with that power is becomes, you know, great responsibility. So every message has to be perfect, right? So what I'm going to do today is really talk about the sort of breakdown and the foundation of how enterprise brands consume mobile. So I'm not going to do a Vibes commercial, but interestingly enough, you know, we do play in these in all these spaces. We have a SaaS platform that we've had for many years, you know, enabling orchestration, marketing orchestration, and mobile campaign management for big enterprise leading brands. Dario mentioned that we're in 26 countries. Today, my remarks are going to be mostly about the infrastructure and the dynamics in North America, right? Because it starts to change. You get different carriers and different aggregators and different you know, approaches to market from the CPaaS players in different markets. So today I'm going to focus on North America. But what I'm going to break down is the you know, sort of the inner workings and entanglement of the SaaS platforms, CPaaS and API suites. And I'm going to break this category into two, and then carrier connectivity. And you kind of need all of these to operate. And we've got, you know, Vibes has a presence in all three. And so I think my remarks will be relevant. But what enterprise brands, getting back to consumption, enterprise brands want different ways to, you know, consume and be able to contact their consumer. So consuming APIs via SaaS platform, or consuming, you know, like a full suite of services from a CPaaS, these are very different things. And so a lot of these brands are going to want these, you know, they want options, they want optionality, and they want this unbundled so they can choose the way, what they want to use, you know, to best sort of fit their strategy and, you know, give them the ability to sort of unpack and contact the consumer in the manner that they want. So on this theme of consumption, I'm going to flip these three layers and go through the vertical spaces and talk about, again, how an enterprise brand consumes mobile. And so on the theme of consumption, I'm going to use another tribute to Italy. We've got the Italian pizza here. And so when we think about how do enterprise brands consume these categories and consume mobile, I want to start with an analogy. And so we'll use pizza as a service as this analogy. So think about the following. I'll just lay the groundwork here. You know, you have pizza that you make at home yourself. You have take and bake, like a, you know, DiGiorno. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. Then you got delivery, like a Domino's. And then you have, when you go out to pizza here in Chicago, you know, like a Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza, if you've ever been to Chicago. And so let's think about what you're doing versus what is being done for you in these instances. So if you make your own pizza, then you've got your own, you know, your own table, your own beverages, you got your own oven, your own pizza dough, you got your sauce, toppings, and cheese. You're doing it all yourself, right? And that's your make at home. If it's DiGiorno, it's a take and bake, then you're providing the table and your beverage and you're baking it, but the rest is done for you. Okay, delivery, they're doing all the cooking for you and you're just eating it at home And then when you go to a restaurant, everything's happening for you. So this is what this looks like. Take the Take and Bake. They're providing you the pizza dough, the tomato sauce, the toppings, and the cheese, and then you're the one cooking it at home. Delivery doing most of it for you, right? And so you can see this is a good way to sort of separate everything that's involved with consuming pizza. And I'm going to use this analogy, and then hopefully it works for their own mental consumption. And so we'll do this for the mobile space, right? And so I'm just going to populate a bunch of things here. And if you are consuming aggregation, right, you just need to route your messages, to the consumer, and you need to get that message to the carrier. You might, just use an aggregator for their carrier connectivity and their SMPP messaging. If you're using a CPaaS player, maybe for two-factor authentication, MFA, 2FA, then you're definitely using their API, using their authentication, but you're not using them for subscription or list management or profile and targeting segmentation, right? Different events and behaviors, and certainly not for a UI and a visual editor or for dashboards and analytics. And so I'm going to talk about, when I talk about the API suite, these are really engagement and experience APIs. And these engagement and experience APIs are more robust than just a send and receive message API that you might get from a traditional CPaaS, right? So it's a little bit different, and it's a different way that you can think of it as a brand that wants to target. Do you want to do the heavy lifting yourself? And a lot of brands right now have, are investing in their, at least on the enterprise side, invested in their IT staff. They've got super smart people, very large departments, and they want to build, right? Some of these big brands have this, still want to build everything internally and maybe just use the APIs or maybe just use aggregation for that last mile. But choice is very important, for the brands. And so if you don't want to be building out all the targeting and segmentation and hosting and figuring out how do we matching up these data profiles with our larger CRM, and our larger CDP, then this can be done for you with these experience APIs, which I'll get into in a second. And then, of course, over on the SaaS side, you've got the UI, the visual editor, you've got dashboards for analytics, and you basically everything is done for you in the SaaS model, right? So let's go through these in a little more detail. So aggregation. So just to give a little bit of history, so this was the Common Short Code Administration website, just a screenshot from 2010, which listed the tier 1 aggregators in the US. And so in fact, all these companies except for Vibes, different logo for Vibes now, but all these companies have been consumed by different companies. And so the whole space looks completely different. There's 10 companies here. This is now down to 4, but just to show you sort of the evolution, all these companies have been consumed or disappeared. Some of the bad actors were actually disconnected. And so this slide now is from about 2017, 2018. This was the last sort of publicly available verification of the US, of the North America tier 1 providers. And so just to give another little history here, iConnective sold some of their messaging assets to Infobip. And I think it's important just to see who becomes who. Mblox sold to Cinch. Mgage became Kalera. Open Market, we know, was purchased by Infobip. SAP was purchased by Cinch. Outspoken kind of disappeared. Twilio since invested in Cineverse. And then 3CI was purchased by IMI, and then Cisco bought IMI. And so you have this interesting consolidation where Cinch and Infobip have really been running sort of the global roll-up of aggregators. But, I think it would be actually helpful for the industry to get this publicly available certification back. There were some tier 2 and tier 3 players back in the day that complained that it was unfair to have the tier 1s listed publicly on a site. And I think that's caused more confusion than clarity. And so I'd urge the carriers and the registrars let's get that back so enterprise brands know exactly who they're dealing with and can sort of have the transparency that they deserve. And so I view our role at Vibes is to control the messages that are coming from these enterprise brands through our pipes to the carriers, right? And I talk a lot about quality and compliance. We're going to talk even more about that in a minute. But at the end of the day, my job is to control the messages that are coming through, through our pipes. And let's now get into the CPaaS vertical. So CPaaS has just been a remarkable, again, I used the word explosion earlier, explosion of the category, thanks to Twilio, just really creating an entire category. We got a lot of chasers, but I think this slide from IDC is actually quite illuminating because it shows that the biggest companies, in the world really are very interested in, making a stake in this, in this market, in this space. You got Microsoft, in AT&T, Alcatel-Lucent, right? So a lot of the big telecom players like an Avaya and whatnot. But Twilio really led the way. And of course, you've got like a Vonage, MessageBird, Sinch, Infobip, and Bandwidth as the chasers. But let's really look at what Twilio has done. So Twilio really had the breakout, acceleration and market leadership of of making the market. But, we got one analyst saying this could be a $14 billion market by 2025. I think that's a little low. And just to show you how, this chart isn't that old, right? This is Q2 of 21. So just about 2 years old. And their revenue was just under $500 million a quarter. Okay, this is publicly available to Twilio data. And just in the recent 2 quarters, Twilio was above $1 billion and is slightly below $1 billion in their last quarter. And so this is just, it's remarkable growth and it's a remarkable category. And so, kudos to them for sort of leading the pack and then getting this huge category off the ground and, getting away from sort of revenue and market factors to consumer use cases, taking the API and then building the logic on top and running with what you want to do as an enterprise, either tech brand or consumer, marketing brand. Given that flexibility, there's been just an explosion of use cases, right? And so that's been really exciting to see, just the sheer volume take off because of the CPaaS category. All right. And so I talked about, enhancing that traditional CPaaS, send and receive message API. And how do we pack more into the API if there's a brand that doesn't want to build everything, but they do want to run on APIs as opposed to logging in and doing everything in a SaaS platform. And that's where these the differentiation of these experience and engagement APIs really matter. And so, any good CPaaS is going to have great tech documentation and provisioning processes. I talk about channel APIs versus experience APIs. And again, you can get a channel API to deliver that message or to deliver that push notification. But it's the experience APIs that are doing, event triggered messaging, right? Or callbacks. You got to think about the heavy lifting of, what are you doing about carrier lookups? What are you doing about, disconnect files? And so there's a lot in just subscription management. I think subscription management from a compliance standpoint is probably the most complicated and the most important thing, right? An enterprise brand doesn't want to be exposed to, litigation or sending people messages after 8 p.m. in Florida, all right, which is illegal. And so how are you putting these controls in that focus on quality? And you can build that protection, you can build compliance, you can build subscription management into the API, which again is a more sophisticated API and a more robust API than just like a send and receive message API. So the example is, like, just say you're subscribing to a database via a website. The difference between a CPaaS API and a mobile experience API is that it's a single API request. the compliance management that I keep talking about, but also just message templating and like how are you doing the flow? What's the user engagement? What's the two-way conversation that's enabled, and how robust is that? And then putting people on a welcome stream, welcome offer, and doing the subscription management. So I think, the theme here is just that there's a lot of sophistication built into the APIs, and the more a brand wants some of that sophistication done for them, the more they need an experience API or really a SaaS platform, right? And so at Vibes, this is where we spend most of our time. We built, a SaaS platform 15 years ago, and it's been tinkering on it ever since. But this is the UI, this is the campaign management and orchestration, dashboard for analytics, which leveraging AI, which I'll talk about in a little bit, just getting a lot more powerful in terms of send time windows and send time optimization, propensity to buy, lots of AI analysis on like right message, right person, right time, right channel, right? That's sort of that destination, that vision that we've been chasing for a long time. And that's one of those, we'll never, you'll never get there to perfection, but it's the journey and the always trying to improve and always trying to get higher click-through rates and better conversion and better experiences and segmentation. Like you don't want to be sending a database to, or sorry, you don't want to be sending a message to an entire database if it's a women's clothing ad targeted at me. Like that's ineffective. And so how do we make the medium the most efficient? Because that's really what it's built for. All right. So getting into this more marketing centric line of thinking in this talk, this is a framework that we've shared with CMOs, and so I'm sharing it with all of you. I think it's phenomenal. It just provides a lot of commentary and questions and dialogue in my meetings with CMOs. And so I wanted to sort of break this down. This is the x-axis is reach. So email has really large reach, but the engagement, this y-axis, is very low, right? We talked about open rates being down below 10% for emails for most enterprise brands. And so you have large reach, but low engagement. And then you have the app. I'll go to the flip to the top of the pyramid here. The app does not have large reach, right? So you see not a great surface area here, but it is the most engaged customers you have, right? The most loyal, right? The folks that are downloading your app, those are your best customers. And I think that there's been, I think marketers are finally realizing, okay, I'm getting diminishing returns on the money that I'm spending to drive downloads. Like I might have hit a plateau on how many downloads, how many millions of people, have the app. And so there's been this myopic focus on app and email. And we like to talk about the engagement gap and filling that gap with messaging and mobile wallet. I won't talk a lot about mobile wallet today, but if you're interested, we are the #1 partner for both Apple and Google, putting loyalty cards, coupons and offers, ID cards, different types of, ticketing, gift cards. The wallet is super useful. And there's tons of enterprise brands that are using it and have, providing these great experiences. But the combo of SMS and wallet really helps provide, a bridge and just sort of fill that gap, between the app and email. And when you think about marketers just need to be in more places. The app isn't going to be everything. Email's not going to be everything. Email's not going anywhere, right? We talked earlier about there's still a response. It's just like direct mail. Direct mail, you might not order things from the catalog, but it still comes to your house because 1% of the people that get the catalog are making a purchase, and that's ROI positive. And so there's still direct mail. There's still going to be email. The app is fantastic. I'm not saying I'm not anti-app. I'm pro-app. And I think SMS and wallet are complementary and work with the app, right? This is all about how do you get these channels working together. And the CMO's job is really a lot more complicated today. You got to be in more places. You can't ignore TikTok. Like, what's your new TikTok strategy? Just the same with Snapchat and Twitter and sort of all the evolution of where the consumers are. So I want to talk about just really like the ecosystem and how marketers still need to access these 4 verticals that I spent, doing the pizza analogy, the consumption analogy. And so if you're a big marketer, or if you're a big agency that's providing marketing services, and you don't have connectivity, but you're a great marketer, and maybe you're even a great mobile marketer, you still need to either route your messages through Vibes or through one of the other tier 1s, right? And then you have like the other tier 1s, and just like the CPaaS players, all trying to go north and build these engagement platforms. And that's really about, expanding businesses. Everybody wants growth, but it's also about margin. There's a little bit of a race to the bottom in straight up wholesale messaging. And so how do you get more software revenue? How do you increase your gross margins and get all the value that I was talking about from SaaS and from the experience APIs, because those are more valuable to marketers and they're willing to pay for those engagements and experiences, right? And, look, you have a lot of people without the marketing expertise, without any compliance expertise, and they need to, again, who are they routing through, and how are they getting, how are they getting to market in a compliant way, and in a way that creates a great experience, right? Again, this is such a personal device that the experience has to be, it has to be perfect, right? Otherwise, you get a bad experience. It really is almost harmful to your brand, because it's, when you send that message, you're interrupting people's day, right? So I always talk about every engagement, needs to be perfect, right? So I love quadrants. So here's just another quadrant. And one of my, big thesis for the day is just this unique combo of the API and developer ecosystem. And so the use cases are really going to flourish when the API sophistication combined with this surge into artificial intelligence and machine learning, and combining that with a robust developer ecosystem, right? You're giving more tools. We've seen this flourish with, the bigger CPaaS players, bigger tech giants. When you give them APIs and you give a developer ecosystem, a lot of use cases and a lot of volume, came out of this. And so I believe a similar thing will happen with AI sophistication. So it's really the combo of the API with AI, and that sophistication. The more sophisticated you are, and the bigger the quality of your developer ecosystem, this is going to be a huge unlock for huge value in the space. Okay, so what's new? So with the AI, with that API sophistication and leveraging AI, there's going to be a much bigger and broader need for controls, right? And so how are we protecting the consumer? And so, we call it provisioning, management, and compliance, PMC. And so this is going to be more and more important going forward, because the AI is going to be automating more of these tasks. So you're going to have more guardrails that are automatically detecting, either rules that are being broken, or optimizing, like I talked about, send windows and send time optimization and propensity to buy. Let's only send this message to the people in the database that we think are most likely to buy. And just to draw your attention to this, AI ML based content monitoring and filtering, we've actually been doing this. We have a patent on, text to screen. If anybody's been to a concert where, way back in the day, you'd send a text message up to the Jumbotron at a Major League Baseball park or in Times Square, we did a lot. And then we ended up doing tours for all the big brands. That was the beginning of us being able to filter and not put swear words, bad words up on the stage, but also being able to know context, right? So someone saying, hey, hey, Rachel, you're the bomb is like slang, but there's a bomb in the bathroom is very different. And so being able to differentiate. And so we've taken our years of filtering and applied that to the volume, going through our pipes. And we did a really interesting analysis for one of our retail pharmacy clients, which is just a good analogy to talk about this provisioning, management, and compliance. Now it's going to leverage AI. We noticed that, and we did a tag cloud, like a word cloud of what were the most common responses that people were responding back to the brand with via messaging. And Florida was one of these for a retail pharmacy. And so it was very interesting that people were getting prescription medication alerts, like your prescription is ready. And consumers naturally get a message, and they've been taught to reply to their friends and family members, because that's the basis of the messaging medium, instant two-way dialogue. And so they would reply with, I'm not at home, I'm in Florida for the winter, or here's my address in Florida, or here, can you send this to my pharmacy in Florida? And it was remarkable in the winter months how many times we saw Florida. And we went to the brand and we said, hey, like, you should be responding to these. Right now, they're just getting an I don't understand your message reply. And so you're just, cutting out the consumer from a dialogue that they want to have, right? And so this is, again, this amazing renaissance of the ability to have these two-way conversations is here now. And brands just need to lean in, because the tech is here, and say, you know what, we want to turn that, we'll send this to your address in Florida, no problem, and turn that into a two-way based dialogue that gets the consumer, the satisfaction that they're looking for, right? So you got to have monitoring and opt-out, your opt-out rates. If your opt-out rates are super high on any given broadcast message, you need, back to the drawing board, right? And so there's really got to be just an agreement amongst the messaging ecosystem to put in the right controls, monitor traffic, and do the right thing for the space, because we don't want SMS particularly to turn into email. And I don't think that's a problem. But the FCC is, firing across the bow. So this is the Wall Street Journal article from about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, where cell phone companies must block obvious scam texts. And it went on to give a pretty, I'd say not mean-spirited, but damning review of the spam problem via SMS. And it really upsets me, because I think the US carriers have done a remarkable job. If you compare the US market and the number of spam texts we get in the US compared to other countries, like the US has done a very good job protecting the ecosystem. And so, the messages are sneaking through. It is mostly on long codes, not short codes. And, I think it's a problem. So again, everybody's got to participate in protecting the ecosystem. It's not like SMS is about to turn into email, but it just takes, a few bad actors to sort of, spoil that. And the optics are bad. No one wants to get that message. And so we really got to put in the controls and make sure that the last thing we want is DC coming in is regulators coming in and trying to control. First of all, they don't understand the nuances of the space. Like I talked in the beginning of this talk about how it's complicated, even for the people in the industry. And so at Vibes, we've actually testified on behalf of the industry twice in front of the FCC. And we do not want, it's a little bit of a, you starting at the beginning. And so we do not want the regulators coming up with their own rules, right? So let's sort of self-police and protect the space and work with the carriers to make sure that this is, that the medium stays as powerful as we know it is today. So a little bit more on what's next. I love this analogy. So we've used this analogy at Vibes when talking about the difference of a long code and a short code from a message throughput standpoint, right? So if you, think about the bike lane as a long code, and if you need enterprise, high capacity throughput, you're doing a TV commercial call to action or a Super Bowl MVP vote, that enterprise throughput really needs to be done on a short code. So think about the bike lane versus the bus lane. But this also applies to quality and compliance, right? Because when you think about it, anyone can hop on a bike and disobey the rules. I mean, if we've all but you have to have a license to drive a car, and you have to have you have to have a special license to drive a bus. And I think the point is that with more volume, with more throughput capacity, with bigger enterprise customers, there comes more responsibility and more, more onus on the providers to really provide that, to provide that compliance and to provide that good experience, right? So let's get into a little AI and 2A. I've talked a little bit about them. So this is from Black Friday 2022. And, someone somewhere said that 10 a.m. was the best time to send a message. And actually our data says something different, because it's all about click-through and conversion, right? And so we saw most of our platform messages, again, our CMOs, our marketers, the practitioners at the brands, they love sending messages in the morning, right? And then they think, oh, people got all day to respond. But our higher click-through rate was in the early afternoon. And so it's the first time we've really seen that, and we think it was really interesting. There's a lot more that I won't go into here today, but if you have questions about send time optimization and what's best for my type of database, we've got years of experience and years of data to really help big brands sort of hone in on that, best experience for the best person. And just one example, we have a children's a clothing brand that we realized over a lot of analysis and a lot of time that their best response was about 7 p.m., right? And we think about it, it's when the kids go down and it's likely mom, that's the target for this brand. Kids are down, she's got some free time and she's shopping. Whereas I've got 4 kids and I know me and my wife, you're just constantly doing the juggle during the day. You don't have time to, click and shop. And so these are the types of, this is just basic data and analytics, but applying AI, the future is sort of limitless in how you can optimize performance. So I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback here. These are slightly old headlines, but I'm going to make a valid point that, Facebook in 2018 said our biggest competitor by far is iMessage, right? And in CNN, Facebook takes a step in linking Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp. And I think as Zuck's focus probably wanes off the metaverse, I think it's going to return to messaging. And this is sort of my thesis that messaging is the center of the universe. Messaging is where people spend their time. It is the most valuable channel. So let's protect it. These headlines, I don't think that, Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, the connection of these three hasn't really happened yet. But when you look at WeChat in China, like everybody spends all day on WeChat in China, and it's just become an insanely powerful, platform. And so I do think that Meta is sort of revisiting that. And when you think about Meta as an attention-based business, like their business model is about attention and leveraging that attention into ad return. And so like messaging is the dominant factor. It grabs your attention, as I spoke about earlier. And so I think people thought Zuckerberg was crazy spending $19 billion on WhatsApp when there was basically no revenue. But I think it looks pretty smart now. And same thing with Instagram, bought for $1 billion. And of course, that's just driving sort of massive revenues for Meta. And so my belief is messaging is at the center of the universe, even globally, where a lot of these brands and messaging apps, these over-the-tops, are more popular. It's country by country, whether SMS is still much larger than some of these apps. But a lot of these apps are gaining popularity. And my sort of warning to the US ecosystem is, we don't want the over-the-tops to take over in the US. The use cases can be interesting. I believe in serving consumers where their preference is. So if they want to be communicated to via Facebook Messenger, then every brand should be able to do that. The numbers, however, for adoption of these messaging apps in the US is still really small. And so SMS is powerful, it's dominant, it's certainly not going anywhere. Even if WhatsApp proliferates in the US, it'll be in conjunction and complementary to SMS, and certainly for peer-to-peer. And if this is where people are spending their time, then this is where the marketers need to be. And so I think my point is, again, just back to compliance and protecting the ecosystem. And so I'll leave with this, that the AI opportunity is ours to leverage and really transform business, right? These large language models, GPT-4, sort of the rage, Google Bard is now out, and they're going to help us solve consumer problems and enhance experiences in ways that we haven't even thought of yet. I gave a few micro examples, but at Vibes, we're really leaning in on this. We've got a number of big enterprise brands doing send time optimization, doing propensity to buy, really honing in on what's the right person, what's the right message, what's the likely click-through rate, right? And when you do that, you're providing great experiences to people. And so I'm really excited on automating a lot of that with AI, and just the proliferation, the same proliferation of use cases that we saw from CPaaS coming in and sort of establishing a category. That's happening right now with AI. It's going to bring a whole new set of use cases that I'm really excited for. And that opportunity needs to be met with responsibility. And so that's my, those are my remarks, and I will turn it back to Dario, and I think we're going to do some Q&A.
Well, and thank you. There's a lot there that can be unpacked. I might ask you first, what do you think of something else which is coming and going in the debate, which is RCS and RCS messaging? Is that going to happen in North America? You see it?
Well, I don't want to be the naysayer. I think in North America, it's fairly challenged. I did appreciate a recent panel session on RCS called "Really Coming Soon." So I do think that RCS has real legs and real progress. Most of that is in Western Europe and in different countries. And I think, you can't ignore it. I think the reality, Dario, is in North America, we've been talking about RCS for over a decade. And it being not available on iPhone is a huge block. And so it becomes like a Facebook Messenger. It's a great experience for those that are in it and those that are using it. So I'll never be a naysayer. We've actually done a lot of development. We were Google's launch partner for RCS a few years back. And so we're in it, but I think at the end of the day, my CMO customers, they want to contact all their customers, and they don't want to contact, half the market. That's the reality.
Let's talk about some of those CMOs customers of yours. I probably have at least a couple of questions. If you have questions at home or an office as you are, and you're watching us live, do add it to the Q&A. But in terms of my question first about them is, what do you think are the 2-3 most important things that brands can think or do to stay compliant? You mentioned compliance there.
Yeah, well, I think to stay in compliance, you got to have a trusted partner, right? This is not, just have your IT person get an API and go. In terms of marketing, right? There's different, you got to separate transactional use cases from marketing use cases. I think as the use cases get more sophisticated and the marketers really want all the engagement and all that data syncing with their system, they want more robust experiences. And when those more robust experiences are happening, there's a lot of expertise and there's a lot of nuance. And so I think, having someone, just having a trusted partner that's, been in the mobile space for a long time. There's a lot of email companies that come along and say, we're going to do your SMS. And that's dangerous, right? SMS is, it's growing leaps and bounds, and therefore it's really attractive for growth companies to latch on. And so, this was to show you and to show enterprise brands that there's an ecosystem that supports messaging that's really important. And so, you ignore it at your own risk if you think that your marketing agency can just get your mobile strategy together, or if you think that your CDP can turn around and do mobile marketing. I mean, that's a big leap. And so there's a lot of players, and we've seen this. We've seen the big the big enterprise marketers, everybody wants to supply everybody with everything, right? In 1980, it was, no one gets fired for hiring IBM. Now you've got the big marketing stacks, and of course they want to do everything for everyone. But I think I'd stress test that, with expert opinions, right? And there's, it's not just vibes. There's a bunch of good players doing great work. But I think mobile is so, again, I talk about this a lot. Mobile is so powerful that it's risky, right? Like if you get a bad email, you don't care, you delete it, it goes to your spam folder. Like it's almost expected. But if you get a bad text, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And so I think it's inherent upon marketers to do the research, right? To make sure that their customer experiences are great and really dig below the surface on the surface level of everybody saying that they're gonna have the perfect orchestration and provide great experiences. Like, show me the experiences. Show me what doesn't work. What are the common mistakes? All right. How much history of errors and how much experience of what doesn't work do you have? Because that's actually really, really valuable. When you think about, pioneers in the space, you got a lot of arrows in your back. And so there's a lot of learning. And I think a lot of trust can be built with these brands, when you share those learnings.
I got a question here from James Lasbury. Hi, James. Let's ask, what do you see as the biggest market opportunity outside of North America? What's happening outside of?
Well, I mean, I think it's almost all of what I said, right? It's AI is not a regional thing. APIs are not regional. So I think that the combo of AI, adding AI sophistication to API, and combining that and giving that power to developers is going to create a myriad of use cases that's going to be beneficial for consumers. I think the problem is just separating the wheat from the chaff, right? It's like, how do we make sure that the good use cases flourish and that the bad actors are quickly, put away and clamped down? But, I think the specific answer actually varies by country and it varies by, behavior. There's places where, WhatsApp is huge, and there's places where SMS is still way bigger and WhatsApp has little adoption. And so I think it's unfortunately, that's sort of a regional and country by country answer if you want real specifics.
Okay, well, I've got you here, so I'm going to try to squeeze a couple more questions, if you don't mind. But the first one is going back to those enterprises that trying to unpack. There's a very powerful metaphor there of a pizza. Well, it works with me. I'm Italian. What can I say? But I can see how many people are starting to understand, oh, yes, that's how we industry have set it up and have done it. Well, what about the enterprises, the CMOs out there? Is there segmentations you can imagine? Who's going for the cook at home versus the food services, APIs, etc.? Is there something you can guess when you enter into a CMO's office, where they're going to ask?
Look, I think enterprise brands require a whole set of strategy and service that just giving them an API doesn't suffice, right? Mm-hmm. They want to ask the questions. They want to know. And so our whole point is the sophisticated APIs are actually really good for the enterprise tech team, the enterprise tech stack. You want to do this yourself? Go nuts. But you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. Like, a lot of this can be done for you in the API. And so I think the more sophisticated you are with your tech development team, some brands are remarkable. They've got huge mobile teams and they are do it yourself. And that's great. Meaning they don't, they're not like starting from scratch. They are sophisticated. We actually love these customers, right? Because they can do a lot on their own, and they're sort of testing the upper bounds of use cases and sophistication. And so, but then there's brands that are, still just figuring out their digital transformation. right? And so it's a broad swath, Dario, like it's a continuum. And if you don't really know anything about mobile and you're willing to admit that, and you want to hire the expert, then again, you need the surrounding services, you need the expertise, and you need all the bells and whistles in a platform that have stood the test of time. Really, like there's so many micro experiences that we've seen and we've created that are automated in our platform. And a mobile marketing company that starts today just doesn't have that experience advantage.
We have one more questions coming up from the audience. From an anonymous, it says, how do you see CMOs using the benefits of AI, which you touched on before, in areas such as business intelligence to enhance both revenues, customer experience, and retention versus for legacy models like surprise product positioning and user web crawlers, etc. So CMOs AI and the evolutions of a market, what do you think is coming to us, I should say? Is it qualitative different world, or more of a same but done automatically, so to speak?
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be a lot of experimenting happening for a long time. This question's sort of outside the realm of mobile. It's more of like, how are CMOs going to use AI? I think there's going to be departments in charge of this, like, how are we leveraging this to get more efficient, right? What tasks are we automating? That's just the reality that the business workforce is going to, have to face, like essentially what jobs are getting automated. And then, how does this, like beyond efficiency, how is it driving conversion and better experiences? So any CMO or chief digital officer is also another great titles. But I think this will actually be, we think the CMO really runs the ad budget and loyalty and CRM. A chief digital officer, if a big brand has a chief digital officer, I think they're going to really be the owner of the AI strategy and how it applies to the business, because they own that digital customer experience. And so I think AI is going to be, it's going to affect all departments, but I'm just excited about how it's going to help us enhance the consumer, engagement.
Well, I'm excited because I would have more questions for you. Specifically, you touched something close to our heart, which is the mobile wallet, or specifically the use of the wallet for marketing and engagement, loyalty things. Yeah. I think we'll have to ask you back.
Yeah, it's a whole category.
Totally. That's probably the hour. We'll just go with that. But for now, I'd like to thank you again for giving us a second version of this. Has been a very powerful introduction to many. So well done on putting so much content in there. So thank Jack, and thanks very much to all the colleagues of Vibes that have brought up together so much content for us.
Yeah, and thanks, Dario. It was a broad swath, and if there's questions, like anybody on the webinar watching the recording, feel free to reach out to anyone at Vibes or to reach out to me. Obviously, I love talking about the space. So thank you, Dario.
That's great. So the conversation will continue with Vibes and many others. As we say, this is a renaissance of messaging. We're experiencing new times, new threats, but also new great opportunities. Fantastic. So thanks again for Jack. And if you have enjoyed us today or missed some points, we will going to be managed to package it with video, so you will be able to watch it from the beginning in case you were late. But for right now, that's from us. Thanks again to all of you listening and watching. And thanks to Jack and all of the people at Vibes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.